This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com with your Sunday update for this 4th of July 2010. And now for the real news. In the news this week, pressure continues to mount for a public inquiry into police tactics at this year's G20 in Toronto, Canada, as details continue to emerge about the illegal tactics used against protesters, concerned citizens, and bystanders in Canada's most populous city. On Tuesday, it emerged that special police powers that the media reported had been given to police for the duration of the summit, powers that the Globe and Mail suggested were unlimited, had in fact never been given. Although a temporary regulation was passed in secret on June 2nd, making the fenced-off security zone around the summit subject to the Ontario Public Works Protection Act, the so-called 5-metre zone that supposedly gave police the right to demand identification from anyone within 5 meters of the fence never existed. When asked on Tuesday if the 5-metre rule had been in effect, Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair said, quote, "No, but I was trying to keep the criminals out," end quote. Meanwhile, footage continues to emerge demonstrating that the so-called black bloc anarchists responsible for the damage to storefronts and torching of police decoy cars were in fact agent provocateurs being used by the police forces to justify a clampdown on peaceful protesters. Footage has now emerged of police moving back from the decoy cars and then looking on as protesters moved in and began destroying them and eventually setting them on fire.
This is just a photo op!
We can do better than this!
It's just a photo op!
Exactly!
Yeah, but it's not to our advantage, you don't understand!
Just getting our money!
You don't understand! You don't understand! Have you been demonstrating for the last 10 years? Every time you do something peaceful, artistic, this is what gets documented. And everybody thinks demonstrators are nothing but violent dissenters.
Footage has also emerged of so-called anarchists running across police lines and being protected by police. Earlier this week, Dan Dix of PressForTruth.ca joined the Corbett Report to discuss the actions of the provocateurs.
A lot of police cruisers were left in the middle of certain key intersections, and we have riot police backing off from the area and leaving these cars alone. One of the cars in particular was there for up to 6 hours, left alone, no cops anywhere. And that's when the supposed black bloc had set fire to the cars. And now it's interesting that these cars were allowed to burn for upwards of more than an hour. They were reduced to almost molten metal. And that is because of they needed the media photo op to be able to post that all over the place so people would say, look at what these bad protesters are doing. But what people should really be asking themselves is, the Canadian government spent $1.2 billion on security, and they'll have us believe that they couldn't stop a group of 30 or 40 black bloc guys from smashing up the city and, blowing up a bunch of police cars. It just does not make any sense whatsoever.
Pressure continues to mount this week from protesters who have claimed abuse at the hands of summit security. In one of the most disturbing allegations, independent journalist Amy Miller talks about how protesters were sexually threatened and even physically violated after being detained at G20 protests.
I was throttled at the neck and held down, and then I was detained for nearly 13 hours. I was placed in a cell at the Toronto Film Studio, and I was in a cell with 25 other young women for approximately 13 hours. Throughout the time that I was detained, I was told many statements that I find repulsive and completely inappropriate, and what I view as threats. I was told I was going to be raped. I was told I was going to be gangbanged. I was told that they were going to make sure that I was never going to want to act as a journalist again by making sure that I would be repeatedly raped while I was in jail. When I was in the detention center, I saw numerous young women who were completely strip searched, who weren't strip searched by who were strip searched by male officers. And one young woman, when she was coming out, who was completely traumatized, said that she had had a finger put up her.
On Wednesday, Charlie Veitch of the London-based Love Police was detained again as he was attempting to board a flight back to the UK at Pearson International Airport. As we reported last week, Veitch had been arrested the previous Friday for failing to comply with the non-existent law supposedly requiring him to show his ID to police while in the imaginary 5-metre zone near the security fence. This week, Veitch was detained and charged with impersonating a police officer. He was released on $500 bail. Other people detained as part of Summit security included Brian Barrett, a medieval role-playing enthusiast whose homemade armor and padded arrows were displayed at a Toronto police press conference as examples of dangerous weapons that had been seized by Summit security, along with a chainsaw and crossbow seized from a man that even the police admitted had nothing to do with the G20 Summit. Rallies continued to be held across Canada, protesting the actions of Summit security and the $1.3 billion that Canadian taxpayers paid for it. In other news this week, the American and Israeli case for attacking Iran continues to fall apart as parallels to the Bush administration's lies about Iraq's non-existent weapons of mass destruction haunt the current administration. In the latest development, a much-hyped story from December 2009 revealing that Iran was developing a neutron initiator, a key triggering device for a nuclear weapon, was based on a forged document. IPS cites Philip Giraldi, an ex-CIA counterterrorism official, as saying that the US had nothing to do with producing the forgery and that Israel is the likely perpetrator, although British intelligence is also suspected of having a role in forging the document. This incident mirrors the infamous yellow cake forgeries that were first cited in October 2001 as proof that Iraq was seeking to reconstitute its nuclear weapons program. Those documents, too, were revealed to be forgeries of indeterminate origin. Despite the fact that the case against Iran is beginning to look more and more like the case against Iraq in 2002, and despite the fact that his own agency has affirmed and reaffirmed that there is no evidence of a secret Iranian weapons program, CIA Director Panetta appeared on ABC News this week to bolster the perception that Iran is an imminent nuclear threat.
The 2007 National Intelligence Estimate said all of Iran's work on nuclear weapons ended in 2003. You don't still believe that, do you?
I think they continue to develop their know-how. They continue to develop their nuclear capability.
Including weaponization?
I think they continue to work on designs in that area.
Former Assistant Treasury Secretary Paul Craig Roberts appeared on the Corbett Report earlier this week to talk about the possibility of war with Iran.
We have all kinds of claims made about nuclear weapons programs, all of which have been refuted by the International Atomic Energy Agency's weapons inspectors on the ground in Iran. The refutations of the charges do not come merely from the Iranian government, but from the International Atomic Energy Agency. So there's no evidence of any weapon program. There is the assertion by the United States government that Iran has one. It's the same kind of baseless, groundless, fabricated assertion that they made about Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. And what we have today in the modern world is the ability of blatant propaganda, obvious lies, to take all precedence over facts.
Now stay tuned to CorbettReport.com for episode 136 of the Corbett Report podcast, The Allegory of the Curtain, where we ask the question, do you want to pay attention to the man behind the curtain?